Hello, welcome to Aviation 101 with Laura. This is the first part where I'm going to do a mini oral review. This is just an example for the aircraft dispatch practical exam. And if you want to see what the practical test standards for aircraft dispatch is, go back and watch the first one in this series. I will link to it in the video description. But for now, we're going to continue on with the area of operation that I've got pulled up on the screen here so you can kind of follow along. This is task A about regulatory requirements. I'm just going to give some examples and then I'll answer each question. I will release two versions of this video. One is I'll label in the video description and the title. One will have the questions, one will not, answered, so that you can basically just listen to the version where I just do the questions and then you just figure it out. Or you can do the one where I do the questions and I do the answers. And I would love to know in the video description what you actually prefer. What is better for your personal study? Okay, so some example questions that the examiner might ask in this area of operation. The first area, they want to make sure that you can determine, to tell them about regulatory requirements for aircraft dispatchers. So, what is an aircraft dispatcher? An aircraft dispatcher is an airman licensed by the Federal Aviation Administration in the United States who is a person that is a required member of the operation under 14 CFR Part 121, and the dispatcher has a variety of functions that they need to perform in their daily duties. Now, notice I stopped. I didn't keep rambling on about what dispatchers do. I just stopped because now they can decide if they want to ask you another question. Okay, so we'll go on to the next question. So what is a dispatcher actually responsible for at these Part 121 air carriers? A dispatcher is responsible for operational control of the flights. At most airlines, this also is another responsibility, is going to be planning a flight, doing pre-flight evaluation, generating some sort of pre-flight briefing for the flight crew, producing a flight plan, determining the required fuel load, evaluating the weather, NOTAMs, all other safety of flight information relating to air traffic control, flow, and then monitoring the progress of each flight in progress until it reaches its destination or until the dispatcher's shift ends. This can also include weight and balance planning. It depends on the company, what exactly you're going to be tasked with as an aircraft dispatcher, but that's basic requirement or responsibilities that an aircraft dispatcher would typically have. So you mentioned operational control. What is operational control? So operational control is defined by 14 CFR Part 1.1, that's definitions, and it is the exercise of authority over initiating, conducting, and terminating a flight. So, who holds operational control at an air carrier? Well, at an air carrier in the United States under Part 121, operational control is held by two people. One is the pilot in command of the flight, the other is the aircraft dispatcher. And either one of these people has the ability to exercise that authority that I just mentioned, meaning either person can determine that the flight cannot continue as planned or bring up that something is unsafe about the operation that they don't want to do. Also, either one of these people, the pilot in command and the aircraft dispatcher, both have to agree that the flight can be completed with safety. And that is the operational control concept in the United States. Okay, so you mentioned making a flight plan. So how are you going to be doing that? Like, what are you going to have to prepare for that? What kind of documents are required? Okay, so for producing a flight plan, there are a couple documents that are always required that the dispatcher is going to be providing. We often call it the release package, but really, if you're a dispatcher, you're going to be creating a dispatch release. It's a required document. There are certain required elements that need to be in that dispatch release that the crew is going to be looking at in their pre-flight briefing. And then the other thing that you always must be preparing is a load manifest. And that is going to be basically covering maximum weights for the operation, the actual weights for that operation, the dispatch release. It's going to include the minimum required fuel. It is going to include the type of operation, if it's IFR or VFR. Very commonly it's IFR. It's going to include airports that you're allowed to go to, like departure airport, arrival airport, any required alternate airports. It's going to include the flight number, tail number, who is designated pilot in command. It is going to have all the pertinent NOTAMs, notices to airmen. It is going to include weather information that you are attaching for the crew to review as the dispatcher. So that is going to be part of your flight release package that you're preparing. And then when you're complete, like with preparing this flight plan package, you as a dispatcher are going to sign it saying, I believe this flight can be completed with safety. And then you're going to send it to the pilot in command. If the pilot in command agrees that it's going to be completed with safety, they also would sign the dispatch release, and then the flight would be good to go. Okay, so let's say you prepare the dispatch release and then something happens with the paperwork where you have to change something about the dispatch release. How do you do that? Okay, so to change the dispatch release, we can do what we sometimes call a pen and ink change. That's going to be where I am going to make a change to the dispatch release. I mean, modern times is a computerized thing that we're going to do, but it could be as simple as asking the pilot in command to mark off something, like say we're going to change our fuel loading. We can mark off the fuel loading, update it, and then I am going to make sure that the pilot in command agrees with that change. And then I, as a dispatcher, am going to provide the pilot in command with my initials, like I'm LJL, and the time in UTC that amendment or change to the dispatch release is being issued. And like right now it is, it's like 9:20 in the morning where I am. So I would convert that to UTC and give that to the pilot, and then that's it. It's changed, and I've made the change. The pilot in command has made the change. I don't have to send a whole nother dispatch release. Now, if enough things change, I could send a new dispatch release. Modern times, it's a lot easier to do that, so you can just do that. But yeah, that's how you would make an amendment or a change to my dispatch release. Okay, so I'm going to pause the oral questioning and say the other task that we see that is listed in here is you have to produce a flight plan. That is like part 3 of this objective, is able to plan the flight in accordance with regulatory requirements, operation specifications, and company procedures provided all to the PIC. So, okay, so you're gonna at some point be making that dispatch release. If you want to watch the first video in the series about the practical test standards and the test itself, what to expect, I've got another video about what to expect, how to prepare, how to study, tips for practicing your flight planning. But I'm not going to go over that because it's not really the oral. But once you finish making the flight plan package, expect to meet with that dispatch inspector, and you're going to go over the whole flight plan package and be ready to give like example flight crew member briefing. So if you want to see me doing that, I will link to another video. There's like going to be lots of links for you guys this time, but I'm going to link to another video in the description, how to do a flight crew briefing, example only. You can brief it however you want to. It's just me doing an example, but we want to be able to give a flight crew briefing for the dispatch examiner, or the DAID, who's doing your exam. Okay, so we'll move on to the next area, which is going to be requirements, regulatory for obtaining an aircraft dispatcher certificate. So I'll go back to pretending to be the DAID now. So how do you become an aircraft dispatcher? Okay, so to become an aircraft dispatcher, you have to go through a course of training, unless you are qualified by other means to basically bypass the course of training. And there are some requirements for that I can go into if you'd like. But essentially, you complete the certification training course at the minimum amount of training hours approved by your program. You are going to be issued a graduation certificate from that program. Part of that program is also going to be completing the FAA's aircraft dispatch knowledge exam, something called the ADX. Once you've completed that and you've completed the course of study, get a graduation certificate, and then you do the test like we're doing right now, and hoping I pass, then you would give me an aircraft dispatcher temporary certificate at the conclusion of the test. So you mentioned some regulatory requirements. So where is that found in 14 CFR? Okay, so the regulatory requirements for becoming an aircraft dispatcher, those can be found in 14 CFR Part 65. That spells out how we become a dispatcher. Also includes like that list of things that can qualify you that I mentioned earlier to become an aircraft dispatcher, like besides going through the training course. And it lists the requirements like that you need to be at least 23 years of age, need to have passed the aircraft dispatch knowledge test, passed the aircraft dispatch practical test. All those things are listed in 14 CFR Part 65 for reference. So, okay, why do air carriers employ dispatchers? Okay, so air carriers employ dispatchers. I mean, this is a regulatory requirement in the United States. It is actually very important and a little unique to the United States because not all countries around the world are required to have an aircraft dispatcher. Some of them may have a dispatcher, but they don't have the operational control that I previously mentioned. At some countries, the whole operational control is the captain, the pilot in command, not like somebody else, so they can't overrule them. In the US, we have found that it has enhanced safety greatly when we have a dispatcher and a pilot in command, both able exercising operational control where they're checking each other. And so the dispatcher is not in the air. We don't have the same pressures that a flight crew member is going through while flying. We also have a vast amount of information, possibly most likely more than the captain has available. We have a lot of weather information that they may not have. We have reports from other aircraft that we can easily compile and pass on. We have more information about air traffic control flow programs. We have a lot of information about updated weather, notices to airmen, and we also know like more about the whole operation in general at our particular company, and we have the bonus of being able to speak into those crews. And whereas they are one flight, I have a big picture view of what's going on at the operation, what's going on with the airspace in general. And so air carriers employ dispatchers because it enhances safety. It does enhance operational efficiency. It also is something I've been told by captains, like they and first officers at airlines, they're like, "Oh, dispatchers are awesome. Dispatchers have our back. Dispatchers help us out. We can call the dispatcher and make requests. We can ask in things real time. Dispatcher's going to answer." And it is just like a definite symbiotic relationship. So that is why air carriers employ aircraft dispatchers. I'm just looking at my PTS here and see if there's anything else I want to mention. Can recognize, okay, so we've kind of talked through 1, and 2, I can't really do without actually going over a dispatch release. But then we have 4 4 can recognize additional information that may affect safety of flight and provide that information to the PIC. Okay, so here's the example question. So what kinds of things would prompt you to contact your flight, one of your flights, while it's operating with additional information? Okay, so some of the things that would prompt me to contact the flight, if the flight can't be completed as planned. Let's say the destination airport has something change with weather, change with NOTAMs, some kind of closure to runways, something occurs and we can't continue the operation as planned. I would need to pass that along as safety of flight. Another example could be I planned a certain amount of fuel load and we change altitudes because perhaps there's like turbulence. We planned it at flight level 370. We have to go to flight level 350 or 330 because of turbulence or ATC restrictions. Now I have an increased fuel burn. I'm going to have to pass on that increased fuel burn information to the pilots and make sure that we still have enough adequate fuel according to the regulation to continue the flight. Another safety of flight would be like air traffic control flow problems. So sometimes air traffic control closes an airport, does a ground stop because of weather area, for sure weather information, like I start seeing thunderstorms developing near our destination and I'm like, well, that is causing people to go into holding. The airport's ability to accept arrivals drops dramatically. Now I'm going to expect holding. I need to pass that on to the crew. We need to have some sort of conversation about how long they can hold, given how much fuel they've got on board, before we decide to perhaps go to the alternate airport, get some fuel, and then diverting and then bringing the people back where they belong. Those are kinds of things I would be communicating in flight. Sometimes a lot of passing on reports from other pilots if we're trying to find smoother air, find like non-turbulent areas, passing on the big picture of weather. Their weather radar is awesome. It's on board the aircraft, but sometimes, the weather radar is limited. They can't see forever out in front of the aircraft. So I have a bigger picture of the weather radar, and I can pass that along to the pilots as well. So these are just some various examples of safety of flight information that I am going to be passing on to the pilot in command. And sometimes it's collaborative decision making. Another area where I could help is like if the pilots have some sort of emergency. We can talk about emergencies later, but then I would be able to provide them with extra information and help with that. So those are some examples of safety of flight information. Okay, so that ends my example little mini oral. Again, this is not comprehensive, but that's a mini oral for area of operation 1, task A, regulatory requirements. So stay tuned. Watch for my other top videos on different ones. The next one we're going to be going over is meteorology. I am sure I'm going to break this up into multiple videos because there is a lot I could ask about meteorology. So I would encourage you guys keep studying and give me some feedback in the comments. Do you like this series? Have a fantastic day from Laura at Aviation 101 with Laura. Pass this on to somebody else who could be helped by this content because that's the way I grow the channel. And please check out my website, www.theaviationvault.com, where I have online courses. You can pay me a small amount of money to practice your studying. And let me know what else you'd like to see on the website. Have a fantastic day.